Hey, this is Jonathan from The Body of Evidence. Today I want to talk about a belated Christmas present that I got today, which is that I am now blocked on Twitter by Deepak Chopra. And I want to unpack this, pun intended, because I find this very interesting. And this is not the first time that I've been blocked on social media by somebody like him who peddles nonsense and pseudoscience. In November 2015, I found myself blocked by Vani Hari, more commonly known as the Food Babe. And it struck me as being very bizarre because I couldn't recall at any point tagging her in any tweet or even really criticizing her on the Body of Evidence. So I guess I ended up on a list of enemies. I was declared an enemy by association. I don't know how that happened, but she just banned me. Apparently she blocks a lot of people like that on Twitter. And so this morning, Boxing Day, December 26th, I see a tweet from somebody that I follow, Dr. David Gorski, who's a contributor to Science-Based Medicine, where he's complaining that Deepak Chopra released a private email conversation that the two of them had. And I could see that there was one of Deepak's tweets embedded in Dr. Gorski's tweets, but I couldn't read it. It just said tweet is unavailable. And my first instinct was to think that Deepak Chopra must have removed it after Dr. Gorski complained about it. But I was curious, so I clicked on it and I saw this. That's right, so I was suddenly blocked by Deepak Chopra. I could not follow him anymore, and I couldn't see his tweets. And so the only time really that I had a conversation with Deepak Chopra on Twitter was maybe last November. And it had something to do with the fact that he was announced as a speaker at the Children's Autism Annual Conference in Edmonton. And that was really interesting. And so we had this back and forth one Sunday, I think it was. And then his fans came in, and it was this big thing. And but there was no abuse, and what was fascinating was to see the tone that he was choosing to use in his tweets toward me, which is that he came across from an outside perspective, somebody who had no idea what was going on, as the rational one, as somebody who just wanted to have a dialogue with people on either side of the divide. He wanted to bridge the gap between science and metaphysics, and so that is sort of the tone that he adopts, which is that of the reasonable, open-minded, sort of the peaceful arbiter of truth who will bring both parties together. He's a mediator. And all of a sudden he blocks me. So much for dialogue, hypocrite. And so I wanted to talk about it because for people who are interested in getting good health advice and knowing more about what's happening in science and medicine, but not being taken in by pseudoscience and pseudomedicine and fake news and all these things. I'm always trying to look for tips and for cues that will reveal somebody to not be a trustworthy source of information on these matters. And to me, somebody who blocks willy-nilly people who disagree with them is probably not somebody to be trusted. And I find that this is a trait that emerges a lot in these peddlers of alternative health practices, people like Vani Hari, people like Deepak Chopra, is that when they find somebody who disagrees with them, they generally do not want to have a conversation with them. They just block them outright because they want to create this perfect little bubble in which they are a guru essentially to their people, to their public, to the people who want to listen to them, and they want to block out any sort of outside critical perspective. So that is something that is worth thinking about when you're trying to decide if a particular source is worth listening to. Are they the kind of person who blocks people who are critical of them all the time on social media? And to me, I would only block somebody on Twitter if they were serial abusers, if they were somebody who was trolling me or somebody who was trying to cause me harm in a way, but not somebody who wanted to engage with me in a conversation, or somebody who was critical of what I was doing and was bringing forth arguments that were worth considering. So to me, blocking is there for abusers, but I never abused either Deepak Chopra or Vani Hari on social media. So to me, that blocking is completely unwarranted. It's just a sign that you don't want to listen to what your critics have to say. And so this brings me to a larger issue of free speech, which is that this Children's Autism Conference, for instance, has, there's a petition happening right now. There's a petition going on. It's open. You can find it here. And this petition essentially is to get Deepak Chopra to have his invitation as a speaker rescinded from that conference. And I have signed this petition myself. And this is another form of blocking, right? So now I want to block Deepak Chopra from speaking at this particular conference. And it brings up an interesting question, which is that how do we feel about deplatforming? You've seen this happen where a particular conference will invite a speaker to come in. Then there will be pressure from future attendees to the event saying, oh no, we don't want this speaker to come. What the person says is offensive. And so the speaker is deplatformed. Their invitation is rescinded. The organization says, we no longer want you to come to our event because of pressure from the public. This is happening a lot on university campuses. And this is where I would draw a line between what's happening on university campuses versus what we're trying to achieve with this petition against Deepak Chopra, which is that I am against the idea of deplatforming in a university setting, because to me, one of the advantages of going to university is to be exposed to views that are different from mine. You should be, as a university, you should be open-minded. And you should go and listen to different speakers on a whole variety of issues to see if you agree with the arguments that they're making, if you disagree with the arguments that they're making, and essentially become a better thinker on these issues, right? Because otherwise you've got your own thoughts and your own opinions and you never deviate from them, but you may be wrong about them. And so it's always important to see what else is out there. What are the counter arguments to your current beliefs? So I'm really opposed to this idea of deplatforming people from these sorts of events, especially events that are happening on university campuses, that are happening in sort of free thought type of events. Of course, the most interesting example that happened recently was a deplatforming of Richard Dawkins at Nexus, the Northeast Conference on Science and Skepticism that happened in New York last summer, where Richard Dawkins was invited to speak, and then he retweeted something that some of the committee members thought was offensive, and so he got deplatformed, and then the committee changed their mind again, and they re-invited him. Long story, but anyway, I found this to be completely ludicrous. But so why would I do the same thing to Deepak Chopra? Well, I think that there is a difference, which is that this conference on autism will invite a section of the public that I would qualify as being quote-unquote vulnerable. In the sense that a lot of parents are going to go there who have children with autism, and they will be looking for anything that they can do to improve their children's symptoms, to improve how their behavior and how they can find their space in society, right? I mean, some of these kids have a lot of difficulty sort of getting integrated into schools and into society at large. And when you have somebody like Deepak Chopra who comes in and who spews all sorts of nonsense about how you can cure yourself using this, using that, and you need to meditate about the quantum fluctuations of the universe, or whatever nonsense he spouts, because he is the king of woo, you can actually cause a lot of harm in those parents. You can give them false hope. You can get them to stop whatever treatment they may be using and switch to something else that has been disproven or not proven. And this is what I fear might happen with having him speak at one of these conferences. I have no problem with Deepak Chopra going around the country and giving talks at certain venues. Like he came to Montreal a few months ago. So he booked a venue, people would buy tickets, and if you wanted to go see Deepak Chopra, you could go see him, talk about quantum woo, all you wanted, but you paid for it, and that was it. That's fine in my book. But to have the same person be invited to an autism conference like he is some sort of authority, that I have a problem with, because that can actually cause harm. But hey, I might be wrong. So I'm curious to know what your opinion is on the distinction that I just made between sort of deplatforming somebody because we find his views offensive versus deplatforming somebody because he can actually cause harm, peddling, unscientific nonsense. Do you see a distinction? Do you think that Deepak Chopra has every right to speak at one of these conferences? Do you think that blocking somebody like Deepak, blocking me, is a good thing? It's a bad thing? What do you think about free speech in these types of events, but also on social media? So I'm really curious to hear more from you guys. What do you think? What are your opinions? Am I wrong? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And I promise I won't block you unless you're being a complete asshole. Final thing is that in thinking about this idea of talking to people on the other side and being a bridge and having a dialogue, which is what all things that the Chopra said he is all for, except that when he blocks people. I did that. I did that a few weeks ago. I actually spoke to some people with whom I completely disagree on specific issues of alternative health. I spoke to a sound healer, I spoke to a Reiki practitioner, yes I did, and I spoke to a body talker, whatever that is, you'll find out soon. That's going to be a special episode of the Body of Evidence podcast coming out the first week of January. So a special episode of me talking to these people and being very kind to them and just wanting to hear more about what it is that they do and why they believe the things they did. So I will be releasing that. That's going to be next week, I guess. So you can listen to that and see what actual dialogue looks like, as opposed to just blocking the people you disagree with on Twitter.